if I'm a hacker on the network and I know Brian's on the network and I want to get Brian in trouble, I can scan Adrian's server with Brian's IP address. All of the logs will show that he did it. I can come back later and do it a different way, but it's an example of how you can specify what's going on. The comma random :5 tells Metasploit to come up with 5 random IP addresses. It will not come up with private IP addresses. It will come up with real IP addresses. So when you do this, understand that the server that you hit is going to be responding to the random IP addresses. And that's probably not a good thing, especially if you keep scanning, keep scanning, keep scanning. You're going to be causing an ACK flood, basically a really low-level ACK flood, to whoever the random targets happen to be. The next comment, it says me. If you read in the Nmap man pages on this, it basically says that on some IDSs, particularly Sun Microsystems IDS, that if it has more than 6 IP address scans, it will not record the 7th IP address. So by specifically declaring the first 6 IP addresses in the decoys and then telling Nmap put me at the 7th position, you're more likely not to be even logged if there is a logger there. The next options. -D just for verbose, most like everything else. -N. N tells Nmap not to resolve any of the IP addresses. Well, one of the things I hate is looking at a trace route where only the host name has been resolved and it's got a bunch of codes that mean something to another carrier, to another network administrator, and I don't know what the codes mean. What I really care about is the actual IP address. It's the only thing I care about. If I want to look it up later, I'll look it up, but if I'm going to run 25 scans and then come back later and look at it, it could be a month later, it could be 3 months later, the names could have changed, and I may not be able to resolve those anymore. If I just tell Nmap from the beginning, don't even worry about it, just give me these straight IPs, it's much simpler to work with. -O is for OS detection. Once you get at least 2 open ports and 1 closed port, then Nmap can figure out whether it's Linux, whether it's Apple, whether it's Microsoft, or any OS.
That -A will actually do advanced OS detection as well. So you can do even more than that. It's a little bit slower, but
There's some flags that you use, like the stealth options or for it's like throwing in decoys for make it look like Brian attacked instead of you. If you throw in the wrong options, it does actually show you as different in the logs because it does a full connection for some things. Like if you do fingerprinting, unfortunately it has to talk directly to it.
Exactly. When you're doing the stealth SIM scan, you're scanning all of the ports, but you're not opening and closing or trying to open and close all of those individual ports. When you have an open port and you're trying to verify the actual service that's running on it, you have to make a full connection. You actually have to push some data to get some sort of data back. So in those cases, yes, that comes there. But if you're scanning 1,000 ports, it's better to only leave 3 pieces of evidence that you were there instead of 1,000. That's the idea.
I was thinking if you were impersonating someone else, or if you were spoofing someone else, they look in the log, they'll see that his was only sends, but someone else's was full connects because they had to do the full connect to actually do the fingerprint.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So part of the point of the decoys is anticipating that somebody's going to see something. So if they're going to see something, then give them more data to just hide what's going on. So my point is just kind of get you out to a lot of the different options and you can piece together whatever is best for you. Okay. Before I go to the next slide, has anybody got any questions about these particular options? Yeah.
When you're doing the -F with fragment and the data link with the padding on the end of that, is that using the sequence number and actually doing sequence chopping to bring it, like if you got a packet link, does it chop back the sequence number to put them back together?
It's not the sequence number. The sequence number is the packet itself.
Yeah.
But then what the TCP stack does is whatever data you give to the TCP stack, it tries to fit it as much as it can in one packet. The size of the packet is determined by MTU. something transmission unit. But whatever that size is, whatever the limit for the interface is, you don't have to send at that limit. So even though my MTU may be 1500, I can set it to 1200, I can set it to 800, I can set it to anything. So what it's doing is, when you're fragmenting, you're chopping it up into 4 pieces, you're sending them out. The interface on the other side is going to wait until all 4 packets come in, because the first 3 packets, if there's 4 slices, let's say, the first 3 packets will say, I'm a fragment, I'm a fragment, I'm a fragment. The 4th packet will say, I'm a packet. And then they'll all be reassembled, and then that service will then receive the data that was in the TCP.
Does it actually pad anything on that, though, or does it just...
Data link 9 puts extra data on that packet.
Okay, does that actually chop back the sequence numbers to bring those back together?
Dash F slices that packet. Okay? Ask your question. What was it?
So when you pad the packet, if you're padding packets, you're going to have junk data sitting in between your normal data.
Right.
Does it use the sequence numbers to try to chop those back together to do like the packet fragmentation, kind of push your data back together so you don't have junk data sitting or no ops or whatever?
Well, Nmap knows what's junk when it sends its stuff out, and for most of it is not even going to be. If there is a response, Nmap is not really looking for what did the service tell me. It's looking for what sort of response did I get off the port. Did I get a reset, or did I get an hack? So the purpose of adding the extra data on there is if someone were PCAPing the network, okay, and they had a perfect flow of what went through, then reassembling all those packets in a decoder would be pretty easy. If you're adding extra data onto it, then it becomes harder for the encoder to figure out there was something here, so then the analyzers are going to try to figure out, trying to reconfigure what that data was, but there's no data, it's just random. It's mostly just a decoy again. You're not really, it doesn't do anything for the scan itself. It's just only if someone sees this scan, if they look at it, if they're watching your IP address specifically, if you're just sending a SYN and then you close, a SYN and you close, a SYN and you close, and you never actually send any data, there's never any bulk over it, then it's pretty easy to see that it's just a scan. If there's actual data, even if it's a small amount that's in the packets, then it will at least look like it's a more legitimate transfer. So the whole reason for putting it on there is just to camouflage. So the stealth part of it is really, you're not even closing the ports properly. But when you have to send some data, like when you're trying to analyze a service and you see port 80, you're trying to figure out is it Apache or is it ISSI. When you send something there are a lot of rules which say if there's no data in the packet that comes in, then don't even allow it to get to the web server itself. So by putting something in there, you satisfy the rule of I'm trying to push some data. Let me get a response. And the web server may say this data doesn't make any sense. Tell them, I'm an ISS machine. I'm running this version. Please format your request in this. Nmap looks at the response, the error code of the response from its bogus data to figure out what's going on.
And how do you hide your IP so that you just basically have to go get on some network, just some random network, just so they wouldn't have.
You have to have a legitimate IP to receive back the information.
So you just have to end up going to a coffee shop or something to hide yourself. From that point of view, I guess.
Well, if you talk to Fyodor, the guy that wrote Nmap, I read a couple of his interviews. There's specifically an interview on Nmap, which he says he knows of no law which can prevent you from scanning a network. There's nothing wrong with doing Nmap, with doing anything. Spoofing a bunch of IP addresses would be, not really nice, but technically there's nothing wrong with scanning.
And there's been put to somewhat of a test, though someone